Hello. Today I will be doing a video on Tales from the Hood 3. A father and daughter tell each other ghost stories. The second sequel to the Tales from the Hood franchise. This one has a much higher budget than the second movie, so I was really excited for this. First story deals with a man who will do anything to get a family out of his building so he can make more money and avoid being sued. This story was very predictable, but did have a couple of clever, creepy scenes, and it was funny at times, but overall it was very meh. It wasn't race related. It also just reminded me of a majority black cast of a Tales from the Crypt episode. It was just an okay story. Moving on to story number 2. It deals with a crazy white supremacist who lives in seclusion. He talks to himself constantly and goes on racist rants nonstop and gets busy with inflatable dolls. It was really weird. It's basically a boring, inferior version of the white supremacist Duke Medgar and the demon dolls from the first movie. For the longest time, I had no idea where this episode was going. It just seemed to go on, and I was like kind of bored by it. I also didn't like how they tried to regulate racism with only redneck white people when other groups of people have anti black contempt as well. So, shouldn't they be in that bunker along with him? Moving on to story number 3. This one deals with a wannabe singer who spends time with a rich older woman to earn extra cash. I kind of liked this one even though it was grossly predictable. Oh boy, a wannabe singer needs funding for her studio and meets an old wealthy woman. Where could this story possibly go? Moving on to story number 4. And this one, entertainment wise, for the most part, was my favorite. And I use entertainment very loosely because it was funny at first and I didn't know where it was going. It started to look like an inferior version of the Crazy K story from the first movie, and it eerily looked similar to the knockout game propaganda from a few years ago, where they tried to say black people were randomly attacking other people and knocking them out in the street. And it looked like it had a black American versus black immigrant undertones, and I did not like that at all. The Crazy Case story had black on black crime, but that was more relevant to the 90s, so it had a stronger message for that time period. And that was almost 30 years ago, and it's no longer valid today. And I actually thought it was semi offensive that they would put a story like that here, given the times that we're in today. None of the stories were culturally relevant. Despite the lack of budget, the second movie was slightly better because it stuck with the theme of black related issues. This movie tried to black on black crime and people of color the stories, or had no racial relevance whatsoever. I guess this was the only way to get more funding for his movie. It's sad that a 1990s movie was more woke than today, especially when we need it more than ever, given what's been happening today. The movie was very disappointing. They should probably stop making these movies. The first 1995 movie will always be a gem, and I give this a 3 out of 10. And this is going to be a spoiler, but regarding the fourth story, I know I said I didn't like the message of that episode, but at the same time, now that I think about it, I actually do, because it exposes the hatred that these immigrant groups have towards black Americans and how black immigrants will actually work with non-black groups and punish black Americans severely for any infraction. And hear me out. Why would someone who has the ability to perform voodoo on anyone and get revenge on them use that on one lowly black person? Why wouldn't you use that towards a white supremacist? Why wouldn't you use that towards a Peter Liang racist cop? or a George Zimmerman type, or a Darren Wilson. Like, why get the random guy in a hoodie instead of just reporting him and getting him locked up? Why inflict so much pain and bodily harm to another black person unless you secretly have contempt for that black person? It just did not sit right with me.